There's a roving mic. Just raise your hand. Yeah, question right here. Go ahead.
Is it on?
Yep.
I'm Julia Hawkins. I work at the sustainability charity Bioregional. In a former life, I was at the Ethical Trading Initiative. And probably about 10 years ago, I was hearing people on stage talking about the need to go beyond compliance, the need to collaborate, the need to consolidate supply chains and go beyond the first tier and develop relationships of trust, etc. And I've been out of this world for about 4 years, so it's great to sort of be back in it. But I really would like to know from the panel, what do you think has changed in the last 10 years?
Everyone all right about there? A light bulb just blew above that table, but I think everyone's okay. Mind when you take a sip of your water or wine, there's no glass in it. I guess the point you're making is 10 years ago.
What's changed?
Yeah, what's changed? Have we moved on at all? I mean,
I know, it's profoundly depressing, isn't it? I mean, we've all got some form in our various areas on this subject about how little the world has actually got better. I think there is there are some fundamental drivers here that have not been fixed in terms of how society is responding to the challenges, or the planet is responding to the global challenges we've got. I think what probably didn't happen 10 years ago, what I think we need to see more of, and hell, they've been trying to do this since the Greek Socratics started talking about natural laws and natural rights and liberties, and then the age of the Enlightenment talking about human rights. But I think there is a danger that we've been down a slightly technocratic route, I think, actually, to be honest, on a lot of this stuff. And a lot of, I started in this game on CSR reporting, as I'm sure lots of people did. And, my God, we wrote a lot of reports that nobody read. We all felt very important because we had ticked a load of boxes. And actually, there's some fundamental economic drivers. And the truth is, this happens because there is not respect for human rights in these countries. Let's be really clear about that. That's it. That's why this is going on. There are fundamental economic forces at work around globalization that we're playing in here. No one company is going to suddenly, I've sorted my supply chain out, because that's just, you might create a particular brand position that allows you to do that, but that's going to be the exception and not solve it.
And to be fair, what Nick was just saying, getting a couple of corporates up on the stage to speak openly about this, I don't know, but that probably wasn't happening 10 years ago, right?
I think probably in more closed groups, I would have thought it was happening, but I think it's really fantastic that you're up here in a more open group talking about these things.
Okay, go ahead.
I hear your maybe impatience is the wrong word, but from an IKEA perspective, I think we've 5 years ago we probably knew there was a need to go beyond compliance, but then in the last 5 years we've actually done some stuff, which I think has grown our knowledge of the recruitment industry, for example, and I think puts us in a better position to then take leadership on the issue and be here talking like we are. So I think maybe off stage we could talk about some of those things, but I feel your frustration as well.
It's not that I'm frustrated. I'm actually just curious to know what has moved on, because so it's good to know that things have moved on.
Okay.
I think I think one thing that has changed actually is, and this is why I try and stay clear of the legality argument, is I think most companies now accept that this is not just an issue that's kind of in the depths of their supply chain necessarily. Modern slavery could be in your store, it could be with your cleaners in your office building. It doesn't have to be in Bangladesh, it could actually be in London or New York. So I think that may have changed in the last few years.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's have another question. Yeah, gentleman right in the middle there. We're going to get you a mic, can't really hear you. But
Hi, my name is Sam Taylor. I actually work for a digital advertising agency called Curve. My question is more about what can corporations do to help educate consumers on the fact that that there's a price link to products and to workers and to pay as well. For instance, some of the smaller companies, one called Everlane from America, which is making its mark by being a completely transparent pricing model of what it pays its workers, what it pays on advertising, what it pays on factory rentals. There's got to be a question for us consumers to understand that if we pay £5 for a pair of jeans, someone somewhere is not getting paid a good hourly wage. So how can corporations help educate?
It's going to sound like slightly as Julie was saying about sort of, over 10 years, how many conversations have we had about consumer behaviour change? I worry that consumers actually will always revert to buying on quality, product and price and accessibility of it. I think I've become, I don't think there is a segment of consumers that some brands, largely manufacturing brands, actually rather than retail brands, are able to service, who are super serving those people. And they do it very well, and they pioneer some great products and some great ways of doing business that I really respect. But I think in looking at this, and I've wasted many hours in meetings discussing various behaviour change initiatives around climate and energy, and at the end of the day, customers just want utility and price for their products. I think the danger is you say to a customer, you know what, this is ethical and you have to pay more for it for that ethical quality. They will say, not interested. They'll say, I'll pay more for it if it's better product, if it's cleaner. But
I think there's another argument, because I've been discussing this with many companies. It was also beyond, and then the fire of the question again with the responsible fund investing. How come the retailers are not buying the right funds for their pensions? But some companies have given me a very interesting response, is that it's really hard to market an ethical product given the mere complexity of the supply chain. So even if you're doing the right thing, if you start marketing it as an ethical product, or if you start pricing it as something ethical, you've got to make sure that you don't have the Uzbek cotton in it, and that your supply chain is really, really free from any slavery. And how can you be that sure in this stage of complexity? And so it's really, some of the companies I've talked to are very cautious as to how they could market that and help educate the customers. Because if there's a scandal, then it's a whole brand paying for it.
Yeah, I mean, from an IKEA perspective, we've done a lot of research with our customers, and what we find is they want us to do the work for them. So they don't want a slave-free line and a slave. I mean, they want to know when they come into IKEA that we've taken care of it. And I think that is our responsibility. And there's a philosophical point as well with IKEA, which is we don't believe sustainability should cost more, which is not always easy to do. But why should our customers pay more for sustainability? Because then, and this comes back to the IKEA philosophy that everyone should be able to afford good furniture, or everyone should be able to afford good sustainable furniture as well. It's almost like a socialist belief. So I take a little bit of issue, and sometimes I think that's a bit of a red herring as well, because sometimes it doesn't actually necessarily cost more.
Okay, let's have a question here.
Amanda Powell-Smith from Forster Communications. Just building on that point, what's the role of more common standards across retailers, like Marine Stewardship Council and things like the forest side of things, that can start to embed some of these principles and make it easier for consumers to select?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I mean, what my opinion, I mean, most of these standards have requirements around forced and bonded labour already, and of course those could always be strengthened. And then there's questions around auditing and how robust those standards are. But I mean, we support some of those standards that you just mentioned. There is actually a standard being developed by IOM, the International Organization for Migration, which is called IRIS, which is actually a standard for recruitment agents. And we think that's tremendously exciting. And it's in early stages of development. But our suppliers, often when we speak to suppliers, they say, all we want to know is who the good agents are. And if we know who the good agents are, we can funnel our recruitment through those agents. And of course, then you have questions about making sure that's a good system. But I think that's quite an exciting development, is if that could be a good system, then.
Okay. Let me just take two more questions. I'll have that question there and that one right there.
Hi, so I'm Nick Daniel from Acre Resources, and I actually work on the non-profit team there. And I think it was really interesting, Bennett, when you mentioned that NGOs need to stand up and start scrutinising companies like yourself. obviously there's quite a few working behind the scenes as we speak, trying to embed this. But what's the best action for NGOs to take moving forwards, and when do they start to take action?
Gosh, what a good question. Who are we to give advice to the NGOs about what they should be doing in order to attack us? How hard can you hit me? I think it's a very good question. I mean, I think the answer is they need to work within their, I think that NGOs have different roles in this field. Of course, they're large NGOs. There are on-the-ground NGOs who are doing hands-on work with people, helping people actually improve their lives. They need to escalate that. There are then the campaigning NGOs who are doing, whether it's the Oxfams or whatever, coming after it on a more transparent level. And they also, I think, though, primarily what I'd say is they do need to use their research primarily to engage and to transform and change those businesses, not be afraid to have those dialogues. I think what I often find with NGOs is how scared they are of talking to people in business. I often think they're sort of rather intimidated by it, and they think there's some magic or mystique to what goes on inside of a business. I've worked in business, I've worked in government, and I've worked in NGOs. Believe me, the political conversations are broadly exactly the same. And it's because there's people who work in all these organisations, and they all interact in the same way. So the advice to NGOs is, do research and just bring that forward and get it in front of the businesses. Okay.
Nick.
Of course, just as there is in the business world, there's a huge diversity among NGOs and what they do and how they do it, and it's something to be welcomed. From our perspective at the Freedom Fund, we think there's a huge value in kind of making some of these linkages that are relevant to business that might not have been getting much of a profile around corruption and slavery, around the finance industry, around strategic litigation. Others will be activists that just bang on at corporates, and to be honest, there's a real value in that, and you might wish that they were more nuanced, and you might wish that they not go after the easy targets, but it does get attention. It does help get those issues to the boardrooms. Others will work much more closely. I'm on the board of another organisation called Transparentum, which is headed up by an investigative journalist that's doing in-depth work around supply chains in Southeast Asia, and will be taking kind of investigative files to corporates where they find abuses, first to speak to them, and subsequently to make it public, but first to give them an opportunity to remediate. So there are various models, and I think as you see more attention being paid to this issue, you will get increasing attention from NGOs around this space.
Okay, final question
here. Paul Jarrett from the Co-op, and probably quite unusually spent a good bit of the last 15 years tackling organised crime in government. I think Bennett got it bang on. This is about criminality, but can we not be too complacent about what happens in the UK? A lot of this conversation has been about international. I think the gentleman from IKEA got it bang on the money. There's plenty of human rights not being respected in the UK, and therefore as UK-based organisations, many of us need to look at ourselves as well.
Okay. Who wants to say? Yeah, go ahead, Nick.
Can I make a Brexit comment? One of the key ways in which individuals are controlled and made vulnerable is through threat of non-compliance with the law. And one of the, if one changes free movement of Europeans to the UK, what you're going to find here is a lot more people who are working illegally, therefore are vulnerable and are therefore subject to potential exploitation. Gangmasters who will employ you on a building site say, you're illegal, if you don't do X and I can pay you nothing, I will turn you over to the authorities. It's a very powerful lever of control. So I just think that's something to keep an eye on as we look to change the immigration system here.
Couldn't agree more strongly about the UK. Anybody who's read the press over the last year about journalists in this subject will know you started this conversation. One of our key areas is about UK model factories, and actually how do you really get over that? Well, we've got 90,000 partners, 13,000 contractors as well. So yeah, no, absolutely, and I think it's a certain amount. It begins at home as well. So if you actually look at some of the cultural drivers around slavery as well within that, the sort of classic Western company, as I refer the question of this, what have you done to make sure your entire supply chain all the way down to tier 85 is completely done? It's a bit imperialist, isn't it? Here I'm turning up, telling you how to do all this. Actually, when back home, things ain't so great either. So it's really important. Couldn't agree more strongly.
There's a geographical assumption, but also an industry assumption. I think we always talk about fisheries, agriculture, mining, but then traditional service sector, cleaning, security. There's high risks there as well. I think that's important. Yeah.
All right. I am going to stop us there. We are out of time. We've covered a lot of ground. Nick, Simon, Tasha, Bennett, thank you very much to all of you this evening.